A $100 billion program was just announced for emergency rent relief for tenants. In this video, we're going to talk about what that means for people who invest in apartment buildings or really any type of rental housing. Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Lucas Miller and I am the host of the Fear-Free Passive Investing podcast and host of this YouTube channel. If you're new here, this channel is all about helping busy professionals invest in bigger commercial real estate deals through something called syndications. The benefits of syndication far surpass those of being just a regular single-family home landlord, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about some of the challenges that syndicators or sponsors are facing due to the fallout of the COVID-19 situation. If you haven't been following this situation, basically a lot of tenants are upset that they still have to be paying rent during this shutdown where potentially they might not be making any money, or it's taking a while to get that government subsidy, or they might just not be eligible for unemployment benefits. On the flip side, landlords and property owners are really upset too. They feel like they've been left out of any substantive, meaningful legislation that would allow them to get back on their feet despite not being able to evict tenants from rental housing. Basically, this is just a giant tinderbox with matches being thrown at it. But yesterday, we were thrown a lifeline, or at least that's what Senator Sherrod Brown from Ohio wants us to think. He just announced the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act on Monday. Or more accurately, he tweeted that he would be releasing it soon. Now, in his tweet, he says, quote, "We cannot leave behind the millions of Americans who could be facing eviction without hashtag rent relief now." And then he goes on to say that he's introducing a bill that provides $100 billion in emergency rental assistance to help people pay their rent. He also says that the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act will keep families and individuals stable, because the last thing we want during a public health crisis is people being forced out of their homes and onto the streets. Now, setting aside the fact that he says their homes, when in fact, if they're renting it, it's not technically their home, there's not a ton we can glean from these two very basic tweets. However, we can do our best to read between the lines here and think critically about what could be introduced under this assistance plan. Now let's start with the title, the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stabilization Act. Now, to me, that seems like it's two different bills put into one. First, you have the Emergency Rental Assistance, and then you have Rental Market Stabilization. Now, some of you might know that I used to actually work in politics. I worked for a member of Congress for a while, and then after that, I worked as a lobbyist, actually. And what I can tell you is that there's a lot of information contained in this title right now. Now, knowing what we know about Senator Brown, he is a Democrat. He's been in Congress for a while. He's been in politics for even longer. So that being said, this is not his first rodeo. He knows exactly what he's doing, and the words that he is choosing are very important. Now, we have the Emergency Rental Assistance. If he would have just said the Emergency Rental Assistance Act, and it's $100 billion, it's very likely that that would all seem to be going towards renters. However, he added that second part, and rental market stabilization. Now, this is the part that really concerns me as a rental property investor. What exactly does rental market stabilization mean? Now, you don't have to be a historical genius to know that rent stabilization is really just another word for rent control. At least it has been in the past. Rent stabilized units or rent controlled units were essentially the same thing. So you can tell why my giant red flag went up when I heard Rental Stabilization Act. You see, almost every professional economist in the world agrees that rent control is a bad idea. It's bad for the tenants, it's bad for the landlords, it's bad for the local economy, it's bad for those who pay taxes, it's bad for those who use rental tax revenue to operate cities and counties. It's bad for everyone across the board. But this does not stop people from proposing it. It's proposed every single year in every single legislation, almost in every single state legislatively. It is proposed in one way or another. Now, Rent control itself is very rarely proposed, but things like rental stabilization or emergency rental stabilization are proposed very regularly. And what that means is tenants' rights groups will take this issue and move it forward, saying that there is some undue cause why tenants can't pay their rent. Right now, because of the COVID-19 situation, there's a lot of news and a lot of people saying that tenants shouldn't have to pay rent right now because of what's going on. Now, if I were to read between the lines, and of course, this is all speculation, there is no facts being thrown around right now because we don't have text of the bill. But if I were to guess, my guess is there would be some sort of portion of that $100 billion set aside so that tenants could actually pay their rent. I'm sure there's something that tenants can apply for some funds, receive it, and pay their rent. But I also believe that there will be some portion of taxpayer dollars set aside for these tenants' rights groups to be able to administer funds. And in my experience, this is when things start to get really gray really quickly. You see, it's a really bad thing when taxpayer dollars are spent to advocate for one position, especially one very partisan position, over another. No matter what side of the aisle you're on, that's a bad thing for the American people. You see, when bills like this are passed, they're usually administered through nonprofits. Now, I'm not saying this is the case all the time, and I'm not saying this is the case for what this bill could be, but in my experience, on both sides of the aisle, this is a bad thing. Now, if you're a passive investor or you're a real estate investor and you're listening to this and you're thinking, oh my goodness, we are in trouble, I wouldn't start panicking right now. There's a couple reasons why I don't think this will ever see the light of day beyond being introduced in the Senate. Now, number one, the Republicans control the Senate. And if you don't know, a bill is introduced in one chamber, it's voted on, it's passed, and then it goes to the other chamber. In this case, it would be the House, where it's then voted on and gone through deliberations. And then if they're different, they come together and they go through a conference committee where they hash out the differences between the two versions of the bills. Then from there, they go back and they get voted on, and then it moves to the president's desk where he will either sign it or veto it. Now, if he vetoes it, it goes back to the Senate. They can vote to override it with, I think, a 2/3 majority. Don't quote me on that. It's been a long time since I've been through government civics, but there is a chance to overturn a veto. But from there, then it's either law or it's in practice. And if it is passed, then it's administered. And that's a whole different animal. Just like the recent CARES Act, it was signed by the president, and then it was to be administered through the SBA, the Small Business Authority. And that did not go so well. They did the best they could under the circumstances, but the administration of it was not great. That being said, who knows how this is going to go down. But like I said, I don't see this seeing the light of day because of all of those hurdles that it has to go through. My prediction is that this won't leave the Senate. It will go to a committee, probably Ways and Means or some other committee of jurisdiction where they will vote on it, they'll deliberate, but Republicans will very likely kill this bill. Republicans are very pro-landlord, they're very pro-business, they're very friendly to this industry, and I just don't see this happening. Groups like the National Apartment Association and the National Multifamily Housing Council, or NMHC, they'll do their best to advocate on behalf of landlords and try and get this killed in that committee. Now, moving forward, how can you, as a passive investor or a real estate investor, prepare yourself for what might happen down the road? There are no guarantees in real estate, and while I think it might be killed, there's no telling what will actually happen. So how can we stay informed? Well, to start, you're going to want to go down and hit that subscribe button and hit the like button, because I'm going to stay on top of this. I'm going to continually push out content regarding any updates and changes to this, so you can always know that you're going to be up to date on whatever happens regarding this. Second, you got to make sure you're vocal if and when you are called upon to do some citizen lobbying. This is really important as advocates for this industry, that we make our voices known. And groups like NMHC and NAA can do a great job. But at the end of the day, legislators really want to hear from actual people, actual business owners that are going to be affected by this. Now, if you're concerned or you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to me. My email is down in the description. You can set up a call with me, whatever you want, but make sure you stay involved in this. And a great way, like I said, is to hit that subscribe button. We'll make sure that you're informed every step of the way. And if you have any other questions about passive investing, I'm happy to answer those as well. Now, one last thing to make sure that you can do me a favor is actually share this video with a friend that you know is interested in real estate investing or rental property ownership. Make sure you send this to them so that they're up to date as well, and we'll all fight this together. I appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you soon with another video. Thanks everyone for watching. See ya.